Welcome to our webinar, Routes into Nursing and Midwifery, with a focus on learning disabilities. You're all very welcome this morning. My name is Ricky Hurley. I'm the Midwifery Workforce Lead with NHS England in the Workforce Training Education Department, Directorate. And I have some colleagues with me this morning. We've got Lindsay Butterworth.
Morning everyone, I'm Lindsay Butterworth. I'm Senior Nursing and Midwifery Workforce Lead in the North Eastern Yorkshire. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. We've got Lindsay Murden.
Morning everyone, I'm exactly the same as Lindsay Butterworth, but I'm Lindsay Murden.
And we've got Paul Gibson in the background.
Morning everyone, welcome.
So we're going to record the session. Paul's going to record the session today. If you've got any questions as we go along, please put them in the chat. We'll try and address the questions after each presenter. We've also got a long Q&A at the end of the webinar. So we've got plenty of time for your questions and hopefully we'll be able to answer them during the webinar. Can we share the agenda, please, Paul? I'll put you on the spot there.
1 second.
Thank you. That's lovely, thanks. So we're going to be starting shortly with myself and Lindsay, one of the Lindsays, will be giving an overview generally on the routes into nursing and midwifery. And then we'll go on to Amanda Firth from Huddersfield Uni, and she'll be talking about the midwifery degree apprenticeship route. Then Denise Barnes and Jolene Boyce will be looking at specialist routes into midwifery with a focus on genomics and screening. Then we've got Mark Adamson looking at his career journey as a learning disability nurse, and Michelle Sinden focusing on the career of a learning disability nursing workforce champion. And as I say at the end, we've got plenty of time for a Q&A. So first of all, myself and Lindsay will just give you an overview of the routes into nursing and midwifery.
Right, I'm just going to share the screen with the slides then.
This is going to be a two-man job, Lindsay.
Yeah.
You're more experienced than I am.
Right.
Thank you, that's great.
Can you all see them now? I can't see you, so
yeah, we can see them.
That's
absolutely.
what normally happens. Okay. So hello again, like I say, I'm Lindsay, one of the senior workforce leads, and I'm going to start off this webinar with a little bit of an introduction about the routes you can get into nursing and midwifery and the different roles that are available. So this slide just basically gives the routes that are out there to get into the NHS workforce. So some of you may already be working as healthcare assistants, which is a brilliant foot in the door, especially within organisations, because you then get to find out exactly what that organisation is like, what their normal team structure, certainly from a nursing perspective on a ward, looks like, and what other routes are available from there. But if you're still at school, I think looking at work experience, not necessarily within the NHS, but anywhere in the health and care sector is really valuable. It may be that you go volunteer in a nursing home or a youth project, something along them lines, just to give you them essential transferable skills that you could take into your career if that's where you're wanting to go. If you're wanting some further study, T-levels, they've replaced the old level 3 diplomas that were out there from colleges, and part of the T-levels programme is a industry placement. So when you start the programme, you will have conversations with your programme lead about what type of healthcare you want to go into, and they will try and match you with that placement. So it could be going to hospital for however many weeks to get that experience. You could go into a school, you could go into a day centre, anyway, just to give you that valuable experience. Supported internships, again, these are supported programs which give that experience within healthcare, and again are quite valuable. If you're already a registrant and have been out of practice for some time, there is the option to do a return to practice programme, which could be that you just need to do an OSCE and go through that route, or there is a programme of study to get you back up to that level for you to be able to register with the NMC and get back on that register and work as a registrant. Traineeships is another route that again offers valuable work experience. And then there's international recruitment. So you may know already there's been a massive push with international recruitment over the past year, 18 months. And we've seen a lot of registrants from other countries come and work here. And it may be now that they're starting to bring families over with them who want this opportunity. So it might be that they get into these routes. Apprenticeships, we will talk about them a little bit later, but they are I'd say relatively new to the health service. We've only had them like 4 or 5 years, but for me, they are the way forward. Gives you that valuable experience and you are earning while you are learning, which is the plug line that we use for them. So, nursing. Routes to get to a registered nurse. So there's various ways you can go about becoming a registered nurse. There's the traditional university degree where undergraduate students go off to university. They apply through UCAS, normally having A-levels and in related subjects. So they have to get so many UCAS points, and it's a 3-year programme where you fund it yourself, normally through a student loan. There is a bit of a bursary you get back, just like a cost of living one. It's not major, but after 3 years, you are a registered nurse. Apply to get your PIN number, and then you apply for jobs in your relative your area that you want to work in. Some areas also offer a postgraduate diploma, and this is more for people who already have like an existing degree in a relevant subject, that you can do like a shortened programme as postgraduates to get on that registered nurse. The most popular one of them is Nursing to Midwifery, which they may touch on later. So there is a midwifery shortened programme. I won't steal Ricky's thunder. She can tell you more about that when we get to it. We've basically touched on return to practice. So that's another route for existing registrants who want to return to the register. International recruitment, I've already mentioned. And then there is the nurse degree apprenticeship. So this is a 4-year programme offered by an apprenticeship. And normally this route is offered to existing healthcare assistants within organisations. So that's why I said that role is really valuable to give you that early insight into what that's like. But they are out there in nurse degree apprenticeships, probably not in the numbers that we would like, but certainly if you've heard of the long-term workforce plan, when we start looking at our future workforce, apprenticeships play a big part in that, so there will be more and more of them around. So the types of nursing that's out there, we talk about 4 fields of nursing. So there's adult, children's, learning disability and mental health. And this is just nursing. We class midwifery as a separate occupation as such. So learning disabilities is going to be touched on today. I think that's an untapped, an unknown really. There's very little resources out there to say exactly what learning disability nursing is, but it's a very rewarding career path to go down, so we'll hear from some of them later. The others, everybody tends to know about adult, children's and mental health. There is a bit of a push these days for dual qualifications, so some universities are offering like children's and mental health together. As you probably know, there's a big rise in children's mental health concerns, so linking them together is quite valuable for your patients and the future clients that will be using the health service. And it just opens up services really, so you're not working in isolation just looking at children's physical health. You've also got that scope to look at children's mental health as well, to do it holistically. So to start off at the beginning then, what roles are out there if you wanted to go work in the NHS? Well, as I've already mentioned, healthcare support worker is, for me, an ideal starting place. Most of them are pegged at like a level 2, a band 2 or band 3. I don't know the starting salaries off the top of my head. So if you want in that, we can find it and give you that later on. But if you are unsure of what area of nursing you want to go in or what area of healthcare you want to go in, it could be that you've toyed with the idea of going down the allied health professional route and you just want to see. So it could be a toss up between a nursing and a physio, for example, and you don't know which route to go down. By getting your foot in the door as a healthcare support worker will give you access and sight of all them roles, and then you can make an informed decision. So you work as part of the team under the direction of a registered nurse and nursing associate. Roles and responsibilities vary depending on the area of practice, and you are delivering the fundamentals of nursing care. A lot of organisations do not have set entry requirements for these programmes, but I would say that maths and English for future learning is essential. So if you are wanting to develop yourself in the NHS and you don't have maths and English, that needs to be your starting point. And it needs to be maths and English at grade C or above, 4 to 9, or level 2 functional skills. And there are various colleges, online providers where you can get access to that and start that provision. To work as a healthcare support worker as well, it is a requirement for most organisations to have the care certificate. So this was introduced quite some time ago now, and it's a basic care qualification. It isn't linked to any academic credits, but it gives you that valuable learning about how to give them fundamentals of care. So it consists of like 15 standards that normally involves a workbook and also some practical experience as well. So you need to do it when you're in practice, and as a healthcare support worker you will do that in your clinical area. So from a healthcare support worker, there's various steps you can go to. You can go down the route, you could easily do further study like a level 3 study and then go down the undergraduate route to go into nursing, or like I say, you can get your foot in the door and identify them apprenticeships that organisation is offering. If you've already got existing qualifications, you could go straight onto the nursing degree apprenticeship if that organisation is offering it. Or there are other routes, assistant practitioner or nursing associate, that would provide that platform for you to get there if that's your end goal. So assistant practitioners, they are around there. They're not in the numbers that they used to be, but it is still a viable role. Again, works under the direction of the registered healthcare professional, but assistant practitioners tend to be and are leaning towards more of the allied health professionals now, because these tend to work in a specific area of practice. So they have a certain skill set that allows them to do that. So like therapy areas, theatres, there is some in nursing, but the nursing associate role seems to have taken over in that aspect. Again, entry criteria, it's normally just a bit of experience. So if you've already worked as a healthcare, this is appropriate to you. And some universities do set qualifications, like a minimum of a level 3 qualifications. But again, it's not on here, but maths and English would be essential. And following this, you can go on to train and register as a healthcare professional. Now, that's not necessarily nursing. It could be, like I say, an allied health professional role. And some of the learning you have already done, because this is a 2-year programme at a level 5 foundation degree. Some of that learning, you may be able to, what we say, APL, which is recognised prior learning, into another course. So it cuts down the amount of learning you have to do. So that's an option there for yourselves if that's what you're wanting to go down. Nursing associate, so I can talk forever for this one because this is my area that I focus on, but I'll try and keep it slimmed down. So nursing associate was introduced 5 years ago, and it's seen as a generic role. So when we talked about them 4 fields of nursing, unlike a registered nurse where you specify and specialise in one of them fields, nursing associate role covers all aspects. So that's why we call it a generic role. So throughout the training, you will have exposure and maybe some experience of working in them 4 fields of nursing. So it's a protected law title by law. So nobody else can go around and say they are a nursing associate unless you have completed a nursing associate programme and are registered with the NMC. So again, it's a registered role. They would follow the NMC Code of Conduct, exactly the same as what a registered nurse would do. And again, it's a 2-year foundation degree at level 5. And there are 2 options to this one: the apprenticeship, which is the most popular route, but there are some universities that are offering direct entry. But again, you would have to fund your, get a loan for your fees, and you'd have to get some grants for living on as such. But they are out there. Direct entry isn't as popular as apprenticeships, but they are out there, and if anybody's interested, we can give you contacts. So the entry criteria in most universities for this, it's that maths and English, as I've said, as the minimum qualification. Some ask for experience, some ask for like a level 3, but I think for me, that experience is more valuable than any level 3 qualification, because you're going into this programme with your eyes open of what the role will entail. And as we've said, nursing associate is a role in its own right, and we are doing a lot of work to embed this role and try and get organisations to think of it as a role in its own right and develop the scope of practice and capabilities and competencies of nursing associates, which may vary from ward to ward, organisation to organisation. But it is also a platform that if you wanted to go on and do your nurse training, you would be able to do a shortened programme with this. And that shortened programme is anywhere between 18 months to 2.5 years. So that's just putting a bit of it into perspective. Now, you might say, why bother doing this if I can just do a 3-year undergraduate course? But actually, if you're for the undergraduate course, you need to have UCAS points and qualifications to get into this, whereas from this perspective, you just need your maths and English. So it is a route to get into it if you have minimum qualifications at the moment. However, you might do this and think studying at level 5 is hard, difficult. Why push yourself to go on to do nursing when this is a role in its own right? You can develop in there. There will be opportunities within this role for development, which are all a little bit shady at the minute because it's only been around 5 years. So we are now in the process of working through what that ongoing support and education looks like. But I think within the next 5 years, this role will really get embedded and will become a role in its own right and valuable to clinical areas. And then finally, I think there's the registered nurse. So this is the most employable type of degree. 94% of those that complete it secure a job within 6 months of completion. As I've said, you studied one of the 4 fields of nursing, so you have to decide which area you want to go down. It is registered with the NMC, and you've got to maintain your registration and you adhere to the NMC Code of Conduct. The entry criteria there, so normally some universities ask for 2 or 3 A levels or a level 3 equivalent, but it's all about UCAS points. So depending on what you get would be the UCAS points to get into that university. And it's a full-time 3-year programme, but maybe 4 years if you do a dual field qualification. And following on from this, you can go on and do further study. So you could do a master's, and that could be a very specialised master's in a specific area, if that's the way you want to go. Or you could also do further career progression within nursing. So like there's masters in education, if that's the way you want to go down, leadership, you might be a clinical nurse specialist. There's various masters out there, and you can do it through a modular route as well, where you just pick modules and clump them all together to get your masters in that. So this is just a brief, and it is brief because there's a lot more areas than this listed here of where nurses work. It's not only in hospitals and like GP practices, social care settings. When we talk social care, I think, again, that's another untapped area that people don't actually know what social care means. You can think about your nursing residential homes, but social care has a lot more to it. It's in patients' own homes and communities. It might be a shared living setting. There is a lot more to social care than just nursing and residential homes or care settings as such. There's a lot more. Schools is another one. Registered nurses go work in schools, prisons. As we've said, education and research is another option if that's where you're wanting to go. And yeah, there's a lot more that is this. We keep finding more and more areas where nursing in particular could be an area that could be developed within a workforce and a workplace setting, and yeah, they're far and wide. Right, Ricky, over to you for midwifery. Tell me when you want to move on.
You're lovely. Thanks, Lindsay. That's great. Yeah, midwifery. So midwifery is an amazing job. I've been a midwife for 24 years. I took the direct entry route, so I did a 3-year degree program. It is an amazing job. It's caring for women from the very early stage of pregnancy all the way through until the baby's around 4 weeks old. People often think it's just the delivery of the baby, and that's one day out of the whole of the pregnancy. So it's much, much more than that. It's a course that's always oversubscribed. People want to be midwives. Obviously, it's for male and female, so we do have male midwives. The majority are female. And there are lots of routes into midwifery. So in terms of the role itself, there's lots of health promotion, health education, giving women advice and information so they can make the best choice for themselves and their unborn baby while they're pregnant. During labour, midwives care for women during labour for the safe delivery of the baby. And then once baby's born, our role again is giving information and advice so that the woman can make the right choice about feeding and caring for a baby and herself. Next slide, please. So why midwifery? It is, yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Lindsay. It is a really, really varied career. It's a career that we're always in need of midwives. So it's a career that once you are qualified, you will always definitely be in for a job. We rely on our maternity support workers massively. So as a midwife, you work as part of a large team. You work with doctors, you work with support workers, you work with paediatric nurses, special care baby nurses. So we work as part of a really large team, but we rely heavily on our maternity support workers. They are really, really important, invaluable to the team. They offer support throughout the pregnancy also. They will do a lot of work around observations on the mum while she's pregnant. So that could be blood pressure, taking bloods. Quite importantly, the support worker takes the bloods for screening tests during pregnancy, which Denise and Gillian I'll be talking about in a lot of detail shortly. So that really, really important parts of their jobs. They also work on labour ward and supporting women during labour, again, observations and supporting the midwives. And they do a lot of work once the baby's born around feeding support and also observations on baby. So their role is really, really important. They may be based in the community, in antenatal clinic, on labour ward. There's various areas, also based in children's centres, family hubs, that kind of area. Entry requirements, there are no set entry requirements. It's just worth looking out for the jobs being advertised in the local trusts, and they will be required to undertake the care certificate. In like the last year, there's been lots and lots of efforts and focus on upskilling midwifery support workers, and there are lots more opportunities for support workers within midwifery. In terms of progression, again, a big focus now is on support workers moving towards apprenticeships, and we have quite a few within our region. We have midwife support workers applying via their trust to become midwives on the degree apprenticeship route. So there are lots and lots of potentials. Also, as it says there, for assistant practitioners, nursing associate, and working towards being a registered midwife. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, as a registered midwife, generally it's a 3-year degree programme. You can do a master's in midwifery also. It is pretty much a full-on degree program. So 50% of the time you're going to be in uni, and 50% of the time in practical placements, usually within a hospital. Although there are some specialised and alternative placements. A massive part of your job is communication. So it's spending time with the woman, trying to find out her situation, as much information as possible, so you can offer her the best care possible, identifying high-risk pregnancies. As it says there, monitoring women during the pregnancies, during the labour and birth. In terms of teaching new and expectant mums how to feed the babies and care for the babies, a lot of that work now is done by the midwife support worker. They have a really, really important role there. Once you're registered, you'll be on the Nursing Midwifery Council register. And then in terms of the degree, generally self-funded, but there are, as we say, apprenticeship routes. It is a really competitive course, midwifery. It's been oversubscribed for many, many years. So you do have to work really, really hard to get the minimum 5 GCSEs and either 2 or 3 A levels or equivalent, including English and a science subject. As it says there, you can continue on to do a master's in midwifery or a related subject. You could do a kind of a specialist master's. In terms of career progression with the midwifery, it's really, really vast. A lot of people think it is just a clinical role where, as I say, you're delivering a baby. It's so much more than that. There are so many more kind of career opportunities within midwifery. So being a clinical midwife, you can progress to be a ward manager, head of midwifery, but you can also do lots of specialisms within midwifery, such as a diabetic midwife, such as screening midwives we'll hear about later on, safeguarding midwife, bereavement midwife. You can go into research, teaching, lecturing. You can do roles such as my role, which is working as a workforce lead. There are so many opportunities available once you've got that qualification. And again, the qualification can take you around the world. English midwives are sought after all over the world. So there are loads and loads of opportunities once you're a registered midwife. As an adult nurse, you can also apply for the shortened midwifery programme. This is becoming more popular in recent years. So you can apply for a general 18 to 24 months programme. This will be where you're an adult nurse based within a trust, and you will apply and get support from your trust to then do the course. So you're supported that way, and you'll do the course, and then you'll be a dual registrant as a nurse and a midwife, and that's a really great entry route. So if, for example, someone was really keen on midwifery and they weren't able to get a place on a midwifery programme initially, going down the nursing route is a really good entry route. And as I say, then you'll be dual registered as a nurse and a midwife. Next slide, please. I think it might be over to you. Is it, Lindsay?
I can do this if you want.
Okay.
So, as we've said for nursing and midwifery, the direct entry programmes are the most common route, really. So they're delivered through universities you apply via UCAS, and it's funded via the student loan system. There is some payments that you can get, so between £5,000 and £8,000 as a bit of a grant to support you throughout your training. So they're all listed there depending on which route you want to go in. Now, they may change over the next few years, especially with the long-term workforce plan and the implications that has, because we need to create more opportunities and more learning spaces for these programmes to increase the workforce over the next 15 years. So this may change as we are talking, but as it stands now, that is traditionally what the funding route is. Gone too far. This is just a quick slide about student finance. I believe you'll get these slides afterwards, but it just tells you about what if you are going down that undergraduate route, what you could apply for, because I think a lot of it is knowing what you could get, which isn't very easy to find when you start getting in the system. So this is just an example of where you could find grants and loans. So a bit about apprenticeships. We've talked a little bit about them. So they're open to anybody from the age of 16. Again, as I've said in the long-term workforce plan, apprenticeships are to be increased. And so organisations are looking at the type of training that is out there. We've talked a little bit about nursing associate midwifery, but there are various other apprenticeships within the NHS that you may consider. So if it's not a clinical role that you are after, or there are business business apprenticeships, there's engineering apprenticeships, all them are going on in the background. So it's just really see if that's what you're interested in, to look on your local trust's websites for any opportunities. So apprenticeships offer structured training and with an employer. They lead to nationally recognised qualifications, and depending on what programme you're doing, it could take between 1 and 5 years. So you are expected to have study in a college or university, but the majority of the learning is what we call on the job learning. So you are working in that environment and gathering skills that will allow you to do that job at the end. Maths and English, we've talked about, that really does influence which apprenticeship you can do. If you wanted to do like an intermediate apprenticeship at level 2, you may not need maths and English, but anything higher, they will ask for maths and English. So as I've said before, that needs to be a starting point. And when you get to your higher apprenticeships, we've talked about level 5 for the assistant practitioner and nursing associate. That's equivalent to a foundation degree, but you can do apprenticeship at level 6 and 7, which is your BSc or your master's level. So there is opportunity out there to do quite high levels of study, but as an apprenticeship. The funding available, so the whole point of apprenticeships is you are employed, so you are paid by your employer, and depending on which employer you have, they either pay the national minimum living wage, but that varies. So for some organisations within the NHS, we follow a pay scale called Agenda for Change, and these roles, certainly the clinical roles, have been matched to that. So again, you would be matched on a band 2, band 3 salary, which I think is a little bit higher than the minimum wage. So it is beneficial to look into this. You don't have to pay course fees because they're paid by what we call the apprenticeship levy, which is the employer. And there are some funding incentives to employers, which depends on programme. So some other considerations to think about if you are wanting a career in healthcare. Sorry. Work experience, as we said at the beginning, this is really valuable. It just really gives you that insight into how that organisation functions and what healthcare is. There's a lot of programmes out there on the telly that, well, they do dramatise it. I'm not going to beat around the bush. They dramatise what working in healthcare is like. And it's not really a true representation. So certainly midwifery, as Ricky said, it's not all about that nice bit of delivering your baby and handing it to mum and dad and getting that glow. There is a lot more to it, and some difficult times that can occur. So it's not that rosy glow of, we've got your baby, there you go, all the time. Yes, that happens, but there is some other times as well. So by getting some work experience, and that could be either through school or college, volunteering is another one. You might think that volunteering, all you're doing is talking to people, but that's a really valuable skill, is knowing how to talk to people and how to strike up a conversation. And by developing that skill, patients, clients will learn to trust you, and you will be able to tease information out, which will inform their care going forward. So it's not only about getting experience to see what that workplace is like, but it's also considering them transferable skills that you will get, and it's confidence of going up to a stranger and speaking to them as well. We've talked about paid or part-time work, especially as a healthcare support worker, healthcare midwifery support worker. There's various college and further education programmes, T-levels, level 3 awards. Most organisations offer recruitment events. So if you see that, go along to it, ask questions, start talking to people about what they offer, because every organisation is different. But also you might have some life experience. So we talk about if you've cared for a friend or family member during a period of illness. And again, it may not be that hands-on care that you have been doing. It's all that other aspects of care. It may be that you go to appointments. It may be that you communicate to the rest of the family. But there's a lot of transferable skills from getting that life experience as well. So this is just a quick timeline of where you could be in 5 years' time, and we've done it based on a nursing programme. So you could start your employment as a healthcare support worker, go on and start then doing nursing associate, which lasts for 2 years, work as a registered nursing associate for a while, and then go on what's called a top-up programme to become a registered nurse. So if that's your end goal, to be a registered nurse, you are starting from minimal qualifications, within 5 years, if they all are timed right, you could get to be a registered nurse at the end. And for a long time, this option wasn't there for people. So people became healthcare support workers, became excellent healthcare support workers, really valuable, and almost felt a bit cheated that they had more to offer, but were a bit restricted in what they could do. Whereas by doing apprenticeships and other routes could get you to your end goal. And as much as we've said about apprenticeships, you can do it from 16. They are not only open to 16 to 20-year-olds. Anybody could be doing an apprenticeship. So this is really valuable for those who have a mortgage, who have dependents, who need to have an income, can't just drop everything and go off to university for 3 years and get in debt. Apprenticeships are really valuable for that cohort of people. Finally, there's some resources. I'm not going to go through them, but there's lots here that you can see. You're getting the slides afterwards. And just a few top tips about UCAS and applications. So the key thing to this is your personal statement. So within that, yes, we want to know when you're applying about what qualifications you've got, but it's about why are you passionate about nursing and midwifery? Why do you want to do it? What has set you down this path? Your existing skills and experience, as I've said, them transferable skills. Don't just think about it about them caring opportunities. It's what transferable skills. If you've had a Saturday job, for example, of working in Marks and Spencer's, you will already have customer care skills, and they are transferable into nursing and midwifery because it's all about that communication. Highlight parts of nursing that's interesting to you. Well, tell them your career ambitions going forward. Where would you want to end up at the end? And that could be a starting point of what's driving you into the profession in the first place. There's also some links there on that Health Careers website to talk about the NHS Constitution and that's values, and that looks really at the heart of what the NHS is. And if you can link your explanations and reasons to them, then again that's beneficial. Check your spelling, punctuation and grammar. Your first version won't be your final one, and there is some guide there on that link of how to write your personal statement. But give it to people, let them read it, let them see what they think. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Lindsay. Yeah, I think it's never too early to start thinking about your personal statement. You know, start thinking about it now and making those drafts, thinking about your volunteer opportunities, work experience. So thanks, Lindsay. Are there any questions so far from the presentations? From anybody? Anything in the chat, Paul?
Nothing in the chat at the minute, Ricky. But I'll keep yeah, look out for it, and I'll also make sure that everyone's got the opportunity to be unmuted at the end in case they're having a few people are having tech issues. Apologies for that. But once again, we will make sure everyone gets copies of the presentations and yeah, a recording, a YouTube link afterwards with the audio working on it.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. Wonderful. So we're over to Amanda now. So Amanda's going to give us her presentation on midwifery degree apprenticeships at Huddersfield Uni. Thanks, Amanda.
Morning, everyone. Hi, Ricky, do you want me to share my screen? Is that the easiest way to do it? Let's have a look.
It's up to you. Paul's got your
It's okay, I can do it, I don't mind.
Okay.
Let's have a look. Let me share my screen. Sorry, it's going to flick up on you guys first. There we go. That working?
I can see that. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Super. So I'm going to chat to you just for 15 minutes or so about the degree midwifery apprenticeship programme at the University of Huddersfield. So the University of Huddersfield is one of the few universities in the region that is offering the midwifery degree apprenticeship at the moment. UCLan also has a midwifery degree apprenticeship. Is that in your region or does that count as Lancashire? I think it probably counts as Lancashire. And Morecambe Bay, Barrow Inverness have a midwifery degree apprenticeship as well. It's quite new, which is why there are not many universities running it at the moment. I think that will change over the next few years. But at the moment, if you are in the Yorkshire and Humber region, then this would be where you came to do a midwifery degree apprenticeship. Just move on my slide. So midwifery degree apprenticeship is, as it sounds, an apprenticeship in midwifery, which is essentially the exactly same course as the midwifery programme. So if you studied the midwifery degree apprenticeship at the University of Huddersfield, you would be in all of your lessons and all of your teaching and assessments would completely match the traditional route students that come through the UCAS programme. You would be in a classroom with them and you would be learning alongside with them. What's different about the midwifery degree apprenticeship is that you don't apply directly through UCAS or to the university, that you're actually selected through your employer. Once you've completed the programme, you're able to register as a midwife with the NMC at that point. So these are all the trusts that we work with at the moment to support the apprenticeship programme. So Leeds Teaching Hospitals, Bradford, Mid Yorkshire, Calderdale, Sheffield, Barnsley, Rotherham, Doncaster and Bassetlaw. And we've got 2 or 3 other trusts that are just in the process of signing up with us at the moment as well. So in order to complete the midwifery degree apprenticeship at the University of Huddersfield, you would have to be employed by one of these trusts currently. Every single trust that we work with at the moment is asking that they are recruiting from internal employees only, and they want all their internal employees to have at least a year's experience as a midwifery support worker. So if this is a route that you were really interested in, then the most valuable thing that you could do is to get a midwifery support worker post at one of those trusts. It would let you know more about the experiences of working in that midwifery environment, but also the environment of working within that particular trust and the culture of that trust as well. What apprenticeships really want to do is to train you to work and hopefully stay and remain within that trust. It's not a requirement that you have to do, but equally they're investing and hoping that you'll want to stay there after you've completed your apprenticeship and that you will remain an employee with them. So the midwifery degree apprenticeship is slightly longer than a standard degree. So a standard degree would be 3 years long and the midwifery apprenticeship is 40 months. So basically 3.5 years. And that's because you will work for 7.5 hours a week as a maternity support worker at your employing trust. And then you'll be seconded for 30 hours a week as learning activity, either in sessions and lessons at the university or in a clinical placement at the trust as an apprentice midwife. The reason why it's so long and intense is because the Nursing and Midwifery Council wants you to do 2,300 hours of clinical placement over the duration of the course, but also 2,300 hours of theory or study time and assessments as well. At the University of Huddersfield, all our sessions are taught face-to-face on campus. So if you study at the University of Huddersfield, you would need to be able to travel here to be able to do that. And I think all the other apprenticeship providers in the nationally as well are doing the very same thing at the moment. When you've got clinical practice weeks, they'll always be at your employing trust. It's a full-time course and you've got to be able to attend 100% of all the sessions. So if you do miss out any of the sessions because you're poorly or perhaps you've got caring responsibilities and they're poorly, you do need to make up that time. You'll spend 30 hours a week studying or in clinical practice, and as I said, 7.5 hours a week working as an MSW in a particular ward at that trust. Most of our apprentices at the moment are paid as a band 3 senior healthcare support worker type salary, although it's down to the employer themselves to set the salary. So your employing trust will set the salary. There's not a national salary at the moment for apprentices. Everybody does it differently. We've got just one trust who is paying their apprentices as a band 5, but that's very unusual. That's, most people are doing it as a band 3. These are the entry requirements. So the entry requirements for the midwifery degree apprenticeship are slightly lower than they are for the standard midwifery degree. And that's because we recognise the fact that you've got a huge amount of transferable skills and work experience coming as a maternity support worker. So you still do need GCSE Maths and English at either a grade 4 or a C, or functional skills level 2 in Maths and English. You need the equivalent of 112 UCAS points in total, which is different to the standard degree, which I think is 126. So it might be BBC at A level, including biology, but what we find is that most of our apprentices come through a more vocational route. So they tend to have done a level 3 senior healthcare support worker qualification within their trust, and we will count that as the equivalent of 3 A levels or an access to learning course. So that gives you eligibility for an interview within the trust. Some of our midwifery apprentices have come through access to higher education courses because they were planning on joining a standard midwifery degree, and then the apprenticeship opportunity came up at their trust. And then we have a very small amount of people who come through with the cash level 3 diploma, although that doesn't seem to be a very popular route these days. Most people seem to be coming through BTEC health and social care route. So you're paid a salary by your employer, which tends to be around £23,000 per year, and that will cover you for the duration of your programme. They will also draw down funding through what's called the apprenticeship levy for your fees, so there are no fees to pay for your course, which is great. So you get a salary for the whole time that you're training, but you don't have any fees to pay. You are different to a student in that you can't apply for student loans and you can't apply for the NHS Learning Support Fund bursary because you're a learner rather than a student. So there are pros and cons to doing it both ways, but you do get your salary for the whole time. Your annual leave is exactly the same as if you were a full-time employee at the trust, because you still are a full-time employee at the trust. So if you usually get 4 weeks annual leave in your MSW role, that's what you'll get as an apprentice. If you get 6, you get 6. And you can choose when you take them during the year, as long as they're not during theory weeks. So there's lots of flexibility there as well. We currently have 2 apprentices of 2 cohorts of apprentices from 7 different trusts. And our 3rd cohort of apprentices will be starting in September. It's very, very competitive. At one of the trusts where we recruited, there were 50 applications for 3 posts, and a lot of them were very, very high quality, very high caliber applications as well. What we know is that the apprenticeship route would be much more popular if the funding streams changed. So at the moment, NHS trusts have to make a huge investment in each apprentice that they send, which fulfills all of their salary. Whereas for some of the other kinds of apprenticeships, there's more of a financial incentive, like the nursing associates. That doesn't yet exist. But I know, as Lindsay's already said, there's hope that that will change in the workforce plan. If the funding streams change, we expect that the apprenticeship route will become much more popular. At the moment, it's very, very, very competitive. It's harder to get onto the midwifery degree apprenticeship than it is in the standard traditional route into midwifery, purely because of the funding streams at the moment. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about that. It's still a very new programme.
That was great. I feel like I've learned more again from your presentation. That's really, really good. I think the other thing to mention is that you've found so far that there's 0% of attrition from the apprentices, whereas we know historically we do get midwives leaving the midwifery programme, but because they understand what it's going to entail, they've got that experience from the trust. We think that's the reason why so many of the apprentices are staying on the course.
And that's nationally. So nationally, not one single midwifery apprentice has left the programme over the last 5 years. They've all remained on programme, and the early research shows that they're much more likely to stay on the register as well once they're qualified. So in some areas of nursing and midwifery, people leave within the first couple of years because it doesn't quite feel in the same as they thought it would do in reality. Whereas the midwifery degree apprentices, the attrition rate after qualification, the leaving rate is very, very low as well.
Yeah, it's just great to hear. And as we say, the hope is with the long-term workforce plan that, you know, there will be that funding available, because certainly the feedback you're getting as well from the apprentices is really positive, isn't it?
It is, and one was hopefully going to join us today, but she got a better opportunity in a labour ward room, so we told her to stay there.
Don't blame her, absolutely, yeah. Any questions from anybody? There may not be at the moment, Amanda, but are you able to stay in a little bit longer? You say you've got to get off.
I can stay for another 15 minutes.
Okay, that's great. And if there any questions do come, we will kind of send them on to you afterwards, yeah, and we'll share your slides also. Thanks so much, Amanda, that's brilliant.
No worries.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're on to Denise and Jolene, who are going to do their presentation on their specialist roles in midwifery. Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yep, fab. Denise, will I just share it and work through it? I'll try and share the screen.
Yeah, please, that'd be great.
See if it works.
Yeah.
Can you see that now?
We can see it now. Perfect.
Fab. So my name's Jolene. I am the antenatal newborn screening coordinator for York and Scarborough Trust. So basically my job role is to oversee all the screening programmes for the antenatal care for in pregnancy, and then for the postnatal for baby. Those programmes involve FASP, so all your fetal anomaly screening programmes, infectious diseases. We also look after the haemoglobinopathies, so sickle cell and thalassemia. And then for the newborn, it's to do with newborn screening, so newborn hearing, newborn infant examination, and the newborn blood spot. So that's my job. I oversee all that for the York and Scarborough Trust. So can you see the next slide? Is that, my computer's not, have you got the next slide? What a midwife, what you think a midwife does? Yeah. So what do you think a midwife does? And I suppose this is this meme pops up on my social media quite a lot as a midwife, and I suppose it's people's perceptions of what a midwife is.
Jolene, it hasn't moved on for me.
You're on the route.
Oh,
sorry, yeah, Jolene, it's on the route into midwifery still.
There we go.
That's it.
That's the one.
I'm not very technically minded. You don't have to be technical to be a midwife. So this pops up a lot. And I quite like it. It's what, and I suppose it's what dramatisation is from social media, from TV programmes. You know, we've all seen One Born Every Minute. We've all seen what's the other one, Call the Midwife. So this is what different perceptions is. What my friends think I do, it's much more, as you've already said, it's much more than delivering babies and looking after babies. It's, you know, it's from start to finish of a pregnancy, and that is a very small. You capture a very small part of a woman's journey with delivering the baby and the postnatal care afterwards, immediately afterwards. Yes, we do like biscuits and tea, yes. What my boss does think I do is sit at the desk and laugh, I have to admit. But what I really do is I look after, in my career, I probably look after hundreds of women and families throughout their pregnancy journey, and I won't remember them all. That's a given, but they will remember me. The majority of them will remember me, and that's really important, because you play such a pivotal role in that person's life that they will remember you. So the care that you give them impacts them in future, even in future pregnancies. It has a massive impact. So what makes a good midwife? Kind, compassionate, caring. I mean, I think that goes without saying. You know, as I said, they will remember you, and you are part of their journey, which most of the time it's a lovely experience and it's the best days of the life. unfortunately, sometimes it's not. And sometimes you have to be that person when you see that person at their worst. So being kind, compassionate, and caring, absolutely. Friendly and approachable. It's important as a midwife, you should be approachable because we work together as a team. What you don't want is somebody who's scared to ask questions. You need to be a person that people can go to, whether that's junior staff, whether that's MSWs, whether that's doctors. As working as a team, it's really important that you're friendly and you're approachable and people can come to you with any queries. Organised and hard working goes without saying with anything. Team working, as I said, multidisciplinary team working. It's not just your team that you're with. It's the MSWs, it's the doctors, it's the nurses, it's sonography, it's external agencies. So I know Denise through fetal medicine. So Denise worked in Leeds fetal medicine. I worked in Scarborough, and through that multidisciplinary team working, we've built up a rapport and a friendship, and hence why I'm here today presenting. So you have to work well as part of a team, whether it's sexual health services, whether it's fetal cardiology. And then the last one I would say is patience. Now, my job as a screening midwife isn't to tell people what to do. My job is to tell you what we offer, why we offer it, and what the pathway is, so people can make an informed decision about their care. Now, some programmes and some recommendations are strongly recommended, but we're not here to force anybody to have any care that they don't want to have. So you have to have patience, you have to have understanding. People will make what we consider unwise choices, but it's their choice to make as long as they're given all the information, and it's an informed decision. Careers within midwifery. Now, I suppose what people's perception is that you've got your core midwives, so your antenatal clinic, so the midwives that you see throughout your pregnancy. You have your community midwife that will see you in clinics, maybe it's children's centres, maybe they come and do a home visit. Your labour ward midwives, and then your postnatal midwives. But in actual fact, there's so many different careers within midwifery. There's so many specialist subjects, and if you've got a passion for a certain specialist area, then you can definitely sort of gear your career towards that area. You've got safeguarding, obviously screening midwives, genomics, which is what Denise does, diabetic, so if you've got an interest in diabetes, you can specialise in being a diabetic midwife. There's mental health midwives, fetal medicine midwives. I mean, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many pathways and many careers into midwifery. So although, yes, we've got your core midwifery teams, there is also all these specialities, and working within that multidisciplinary team. As I said, it's not just about delivering babies. There are so many different roles within this setting. If I'm talking too fast, somebody tell me to slow down. I'm very aware it's a very thick Glaswegian accent that I've got, and I've got the cold. So this is my journey to becoming a midwife. And it's not a very bog standard journey, I don't think. So I went to school and I done my what we call hires in Scotland. You call them A-levels here. And I actually failed my higher biology. I didn't pass higher biology. And ironically, I went on to University of Glasgow and studied molecular genetics, and I have a molecular genetics degree. And then when I left uni, done a few jobs, and then I worked in a lab for quite a number of years. And then I wanted to look into doing genetic counselling and something in that field. And when I looked into it, you needed a nursing qualification. And my mum's a midwife, and I thought, well, I'll do my midwifery training and see if I can get in that avenue. So I done my midwifery training, and then I moved to England once I qualified for a job. Back in 2010, there was no jobs in Scotland, so I moved down south. And then I worked as a labour ward midwife for quite a number of years, and then, which I loved, but then the job came up as a screening midwife, and I applied for this job in 2013, and I was the band 6 screening midwife, and then it's now 2024, and I'm now the screening coordinator for York and Scarborough Trust. So it's not a typical journey, I don't think. I started my career quite late in life. Well, I'm saying late in life, I was 29 when I qualified. But it wasn't, you'll hear people talking about it being a vocation, and I absolutely love my job and I love this role. But it was never a vocation initially. And I think, if I'm perfectly honest, my mother put me off being a labour ward coordinator herself, and told me when I was 17, do you want to do a midwifery? And I said, absolutely not. But I think having that first degree and then having some work experience and life experience then allowed me to open up into the prospect of becoming a midwife. And I'm very glad it did. So this, I don't want to say a typical case, because it's not actually a typical case. It's not a typical day. There's nothing typical in my day, but I would say the most common thing that I would come across is a high chance result. So this is just one case that I've picked out of a possible scenario that I come across. We would, as part of our role, we offer screening for Downs, Edwards and Patau syndrome. That's the screening programmes that we offer for all pregnant women eligible 12 weeks. So we have somebody come for a 12-week scan, and they offer and accept that screening test. So we get a result back a few days later, and we get a high chance result. Now, it's just a chance result, and that's what we tell women. It comes back low chance or high chance. Low chance doesn't mean no chance. High chance doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. So because it's high chance, we would phone that patient and offer further testing. And they have two options. They can have the diagnostic test, and that diagnostic test is an invasive test, which involves taking a biopsy of the placenta, or we take some of the fluid that surrounds baby to run baby's DNA. Or we can offer something called NIPT, which is non-invasive prenatal testing. So this test is relatively new to the NHS, and it's not new in general, because it first was released in 2013. But it's now it's always been private. Now it's part of the NHS since 2021. And so we can offer that test. It is still a screening test. However, it is a far more accurate screening test. So we get that result back. That patient is offered NIPT, and then they accept that test. NIPT comes back again as high chance. Now, if it comes back high chance from NIPT, because it's still a screening test, it's not a diagnostic test, we can't act on a result like that. But that patient would then have the option to have a diagnostic test to confirm the findings. That patient then has a diagnostic test which confirms Down syndrome. And for this patient, they decided to continue the pregnancy. There are other options that are given to the patient, but they have decided to continue the pregnancy. And then this is where this case would then lead on to future impact for future pregnancies, which Denise can talk about a little bit later. And that's my bit. Denise, are you happy to go?
Yeah, thanks, Jolene. Will you move on to the next slide for me, please?
There we go.
Thank you. So my career history is slightly different to Jolene's. It started probably about 30 years ago. I did my A-levels looking to become a physiotherapist. I really liked the idea of being a physio and all that involved. So I got some work experience in that area, but unfortunately didn't get the grades to be able to get a place on the course of physiotherapy. It was really competitive at the time, and I think it probably still is. But I knew I wanted to work within the healthcare setting, within the NHS. I just liked the image that it conjured up. I felt it was a respected role and a really good industry to work within. So I looked at my options and looked at nursing and midwifery as a course, and was lucky enough to get a place on the midwifery course back in 1995, where I was one of the first direct entry degree intakes for midwifery. So quite a challenge in the fact that midwifery was always seen as an add-on to nursing. It was now becoming its own right, and quite rightly so, as midwives we work very independently as a profession, but also as you've heard, within a multidisciplinary team. And the university experience was amazing, because you don't just get the theory and the learning, you get the hands-on experience. So to be able to go completely out of school into a ward area to learn the basics of making beds and doing blood pressures, it was just a fantastic opportunity. And the midwifery degree course was just amazing. And in that degree course, I then developed an interest in screening. I really liked the idea of how you had a healthy person and you could then work out from them if they had a higher chance of getting a condition themselves, or if their baby had a higher chance of a condition, or both. and how you really have those conversations during pregnancy to help women make a decision about their health and their unborn baby's health, or both. And that's really what triggered my love of screening and fetal medicine and genetics and genomics. So I qualified in 1998 and worked in Leeds as a rotational midwife, so got lots of experience around antenatal care, postnatal care, looking after babies on the postnatal ward, and, you know, delivering babies. It's an amazing experience to be part of something like that, very emotional, and it's just, you know, a great area to work in. But what my more comfortable zone probably was having the more difficult conversations with families when they're getting unexpected news during the pregnancy. And my rotational posts, working around the different wards and on delivery suite, allowed me to develop some of these skills in listening, so that you can understand what's important to that family, and you change and adapt the conversations you have depending on what that family needs, and you develop a relationship very quickly. You have to have that level of trust. You have to feel that you're able to support them, and they need to be able to come to you when they have any questions or queries, or just a shoulder to cry on sometimes. So as I got the experience rotating around the wards in midwifery, the opportunity came up to work in the screening department. So similar to Jolene, I was the screening deputy in Leeds for a few years, and then applied and got the team leader role in what's called the fetal medicine unit. And this is where women come from across Yorkshire and Humber when they've received unexpected news after they've had their early scan or their 20-week scan. They've gone expecting to be told if it's a girl or a boy, and they've been given this really unexpected information. So sometimes that situation is really sad, and sometimes it's really positive, but I knew I had to play my part in taking them along that journey to make it a little bit easier. And similarly, an example that Jolene's described, I looked after a family who were in their early 40s and had real difficulties conceiving and had IVF with this pregnancy. And they referred to me because their scan had picked up something unexpected. And then the blood test they had afterwards identified a higher chance of their baby having Down syndrome. Now, this wasn't bad news to the family. It was just information that they needed. And they wanted to have the further testing to see if it had baby had a higher chance definitely of having Down syndrome, but they didn't want to risk any miscarriage for the pregnancy, so they didn't want to have an amniocentesis. So I was able to support them going through their options, working out the right decisions for them, and then also linking them in with the rest of the team, the nursing, the doctors, the community teams that would be able to support them once their baby was born. And I got to meet their gorgeous baby. They came and met me afterwards and shared in the joy of their newborn baby. But then I would then have to go and look after a family where the unexpected news might not be what they wanted, and they might be choosing to not continue a pregnancy. And it was really important that my beliefs don't come into it. So when you're looking after a family, it's not about what you would do. And they often say, what would you do in this situation? And you can't say, because you haven't got that background, you haven't got that different family support and their beliefs. So it's really important that as midwives, we're there to listen as they're trying to make sense of all this information. And that's what's led me now into this role in genomics. So I'm now the lead midwife for North Eastern Yorkshire in genomics, where we're now able to look at expanding testing in pregnancy and increasing the awareness of what genetic tests are out there so that people have access to these tests. Jolene, will you move on to the next slide for me, please? Thank you. So in midwifery, genomics interests me because it's just dead clever. The technology that's out there that allows, and I say we, it's not me at all, I'm not that clever, but we can then read the DNA, remember the DNA double helix that you see in your GCSEs? We can read the codes within that to understand it and inform how we provide healthcare. So it makes healthcare more personalised, more predictive, preventative, and just really expands the opportunities that we can offer during healthcare, not just during pregnancy, but outside pregnancy too. So, for example, rather than just treating the condition like diabetes, we can now predict who's at a higher chance of getting that condition. we can put things into place to reduce the chance, and we can use the right medication for that person rather than just a general approach. And a lot of women have diabetes in pregnancy, and that's increasing year on year. But some of those women now might have a genetic reason for that, which means the typical medication we give doesn't work. So if they're not fitting the normal route, we can offer them testing for a genetic change, which means if they do have this genetic change, they have different medication during pregnancy. And then we can also take a sample of their blood to look at the baby's DNA to see if the baby has the same condition. So as midwives, we have to help guide families to make decisions during pregnancy, and we need to be aware of the changes in the tests that are available to be able to offer them in the first place, and then maybe direct them to the right doctor, genetic counsellor to get access to it. And we're the voice for that pregnant woman. So if we can't be that voice and we don't know, how can they have informed healthcare? And in healthcare generally, it's not just about conditions that affect pregnancy. With genomics, it can be something you pick up by taking a really good history when you're booking that first pregnancy at the very beginning. You might pick up that the family have a history of bowel cancer. Well, that could have a genetic reason. And if they identify that it does, they can take a really low dose of aspirin, say, and that really helps to reduce that cancer. So it's not just about that pregnancy, it's the wider area of healthcare that genomics really comes into. Next slide, please. And so this area is just gathering speed and momentum as we speak, and particularly midwifery. Jolene talked about non-invasive prenatal testing, which used to be offered just in the private sector, and women had to pay for it. And we've now got it through in the NHS for women who get a high chance on their NHS screening result. And we're now able to offer it for women who've had a previous baby with Down syndrome or Edwards syndrome or Patau syndrome. So the family that I talked about now would be eligible to have this far more accurate screening test to work out the chance of the baby having those conditions, so they can make earlier informed decisions during the pregnancy. And it's going to be fascinating how this will evolve during your career, whatever you choose to go into, as you get older, as part of your healthcare or as part of your own children's healthcare. Genomics is just going to expand into it. Down syndrome is just an example. We can detect lots of different gene changes now, and really discuss the implications on families to help them make an informed choice. The other bit I just want to touch on too briefly is some research that's happening. So we talked about research as a career opportunity. There is a study starting in England called the Generation Study. And this is really exciting because it's looking at reading the DNA of 100,000 newborn babies to look for around 200 rare but serious conditions, of which early diagnosis and treatment would significantly improve their lives. So there's lots of ethical considerations around this. Should we be doing it just because we can doesn't mean we should, and how do we get informed consent for families? But the impact on improving healthcare is just amazing. So I used to always say to families, because during pregnancy they're quite vulnerable and rely heavily on us when we're looking after them. There's no such thing as normal. That phrase needs to go away. And dealing with the uncertainty is really hard during pregnancy. And I might not be able to get an answer for you, but I'll look after you along the way. And that's our role as midwives. I think that's it from us. Thank you very kindly. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you so much, Denise and Jolene. That was really, really great. I feel like I've had an update. So I've been out of clinical practice for 2 years, and thank you. I had a really, really good update there. And I loved your slide, Jolene, going through the different roles within midwifery. Like you say, people don't understand how many roles are available. So that was brilliant. I don't think I saw any questions coming through the chat. But if any come through afterwards, we'll be sure to send them on to you, and we will share your slides as well. So thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you. And then it's Michelle Sinden now on her work as a learning disability nursing workforce champion. Thanks, Michelle.
Hi there. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you perfectly.
Right, I'll just bring up my presentation. I, like you, I feel like I've learned so much today as well, which is just great, isn't it?
It's great, yeah.
So this should come up now. So it's coming up.
Yep, it's up.
Good. Okay, so yes, so good morning everyone. My name is Michelle Sinden and I am the Learning Disability Nursing Workforce Champion for Cumbria and North Yorkshire. Today I'm going to talk to you briefly about my career as an LD nurse and provide some advice for anyone considering this as a career option. So for me, I qualified as a nurse in 1992, so I started training in 1989, and at that time it wasn't a degree course, it was a course that you did at a school of nursing and midwifery. It was very much like the traditional degree course, in the sense that you had a lot of classroom and academic work, and then you did various clinical placements throughout that 3 years. So I didn't have any experience of working with people with learning disabilities, although I did have a family member that had severe learning disabilities, and I sort of grew up with that person. And the way I went into nursing is because I didn't really do very well at school in terms of GCSEs, and the local hospital, a very big hospital where I lived, they sort of had an open day and I went in there, and I didn't know about learning disability nursing, but when I heard about it, it just felt like the right fit for me. I just thought that I didn't really understand it was nursing as such, that's what I was doing. I just thought I really liked the idea of that course. So I did that. So my first job was working in an inpatient setting with patients detained under the Mental Health Act. And this was the patient group that I sort of favoured for a large part of my early career. So working in secure units and forensic patients. After almost about 15 years of working with this patient group in various hospitals, and after various promotions, I moved to London, and I then had my first job as a community nurse in Bethnal Green. And this job was so different to anything I'd ever done in many, many ways. So I was alone working, I managed a caseload, I was working autonomously, and I was also working in a really, really diverse community, which is not something that I'd experienced. So I had a lot of things to consider and to take on in the way I worked with my patients. And most of my home visits were conducted with an interpreter. So just a massive change from what I'd done, and really fascinating. Again, from here, I changed direction quite a bit, and I worked in hospice, supporting young adults with juvenile Batten's disease. And this was the first time that I'd sort of worked with patients that weren't diagnosed with a learning disability, and just the nature of this disease meant that the children developed behavioural problems. So there was a lot of epilepsy. So I worked alongside adult nurses, and together we offered, delivered this holistic care to these teenagers, really. And it was here that I was, really honed my clinical skills and sort of gained experience in providing end-of-life care. So again, just a fascinating job. I then decided I wanted to really change direction, but I didn't want to sort of give up everything I'd learned and experienced, because I just loved what I did. But I did decide to go into teaching. So I retrained and I became a nurse lecturer on the Access to Nursing course. And I did this for about eight years. And again, just loved passing on my experience, my knowledge. But after about 8 years, I sort of kept seeing all these learners go off on their own careers, and I decided that at 49 I wanted to return. So I did a return to practice course at university, and I got another community nurse position, and that happened literally the week as we went into lockdown. So although I knew this community nurse role really well, it was completely different this time, because I had to deal with all the challenges of the restrictions of COVID, and how I could do my job in that kind of community nurse position, trying to sort of guide my patients and their families through this really confusing and difficult time. And then I did that for a couple of years. And then from there, again, changed tact, and I worked in a residential school for very young children from 5 with severe autism. Then I decided to return back to Yorkshire from down south, and that leads me into this role as the LD Nursing Workforce Champion. So this role presently, it involves me raising awareness of the LD nurse role and career options. We are the smallest and always have been the smallest of the nursing fields, and we do have a huge shortage of learning disability nurses, and this is largely what my role is about. So my role is to be a strong advocate for learning disability nursing, to inspire new interests and support for this profession, and to sort of spread the word of its importance, linking with education, health and social care. My aim is to increase interest in learning disability nursing through a range of outreach work to those in and out of further education, higher education, and across other nursing professions. So basically sort of doing things like this today, this webinar is part of, a large part of my role. I also link with other providers in understanding the need for a learning disability nurse, and I aim to improve the LD nursing network and support, because we know that when nurses qualify in that first 1 to 2 years is sometimes when people drop out. I think one of the midwives mentioned it earlier. It often, reality can just be a little bit too much. It's a big learning curve. So it's about how we can offer additional support then, so people stay and continue in the workforce, in their jobs. So why, so first of all, a fact. So people with learning disability have worse physical and mental health than people without, and this is why we need LD nurses. Learning disability nursing is a specialised field that provides nursing care and support to individuals with learning disabilities, and in most cases, a lot of cases, additional mental health issues. We play a crucial role in delivering patient care to people with learning disabilities and their families. We are the smallest group of nurses, and we are a unique bunch, I think. We provide holistic, person-centred care for emotional, physical and social needs, promoting independency and providing education, all the while maintaining our patients' safety and well-being. So we do this via effective relationships and collaborative working, and most of the nurses mentioned earlier about multidisciplinary team working, and our goal is to make sure that our patients live healthy and fulfilling lives. If you did choose to be an LD nurse for your career, you would have a career for life. Something I really stress when people are showing an interest, and you'll have a career that will provide you many and varied opportunities, and you do get to make a real difference to people's lives. I think what's really interesting listening to the other nurses today, it's really obvious that most of us didn't always know what we wanted to do, and we certainly didn't know what our career pathway would look like. And I think that's the best bit and the interesting bit. When you start your training, whatever that is, apprenticeship or a nursing associate or the traditional degree, you really don't know where you'll end up or what you'll discover along the way or who you might work with, or you hit on a bit of a placement or a job and you think, this is it, this is me, this is what I want to sort of learn more about, or this is where I've sort of found my happy place. So that's, just one of the sort of best bits of your career. So talking about best bits, for me, beyond sort of nursing skills and experience that I've acquired, it was the things that I've learned that I didn't expect to. So as an LD nurse, we're often in a role of advocate, so really giving our patients voices and choices, supporting them to feel empowered and to live a meaningful life. We're always trying to find ways to ensure our patients are included, so included in their communities, in their choices, in their families, and really giving them involvement in that, so really including them. I often find that LD nurses are vehicles for change. We have to speak up for fairer access, for equal rights and opportunities, and again, inclusivity. We are cheerleaders for a group of people who are vulnerable and still sadly face stigma and exclusion. And we are often required to challenge opinions, have strong voices, and continually push for change. Having this much wider field of vision is what I think makes us sort of different to the other nurse professions. It's this uniqueness of having this voice and this advocate role for our patients, which I really think defines a learning disability nurse. So my advice to someone considering LD nursing is for a career is, again, it's sort of similar to what other people have said, but it's, you know, really look at yourself. That's what I would advise. Like, how do you learn? How do you like to learn? What things are you good at? And then what do you need? What do you need for your next steps? So ask yourself, do you want to go to university? Is that a route you want to go? What subjects do you need? What are you good at and what do you like? If university is not an option for you, what are your commitments? Do you have dependents? What experience do you need? Where can you gain experience? Do you need to be a volunteer? I always encourage anybody that's interested in exploring this is get the experience. And when I was in my teaching role, I supported hundreds of access students to do their UCAS applications. And without question, our success was having work experience. It's a real big tick on that personal statement. It really sets you aside from others that are just saying, I want to be a nurse, because the people that said, and I've got this experience, really, really sort of improve the application. So I definitely would advise for you to do that. So asking these questions will help guide you to the next steps. I would also advise you to attend as many open days as possible, as many career events as possible, talk to as many people as you can, people like me or other LD nurses, reach out to your local colleges and universities. There is so much information out there now, QR codes, workshops, webinars like this, stuff on YouTube, on social media, something that definitely I didn't have when I started my career, and I think it really helps to sort of navigate this process. And on to my final, so that's it from me, that's my final slide. So yes, I think we might be at the end of the whole webinar, so I think there might be time for questions, but certainly yes, if there's any for me, then just fire away.
Thanks, Michelle. That was great. There is one question in the chat. I particularly liked your slide about your career journey. And I think it's just important for us all to remember that, you know, none of us have had that straightforward going through the usual kind of routes. That's really interesting. And I really like your final slide on the advice. And the question in the chat is, the job where you worked with kids with autism, what was the name of it? That's from Jenny.
Oh, can I say where it is?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think so.
It's Priors Court School in Berkshire. It's an independent place. Yeah, it's fantastic. They had 85 children that live there.
Yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Michelle?
Ricky, I'm just about to allow the mic for all attendees. So if anybody's struggling and they've not been able to put things in the chat, you will be able to chip in now and ask any questions verbally.
That's lovely. Thanks so much, Paul. Are they all shy, or have we answered all the questions? And remember, if anything comes up, let us know and we'll try and answer questions via email, and we'll send all the slides out on the presentation and the recording, so everyone will get those once Paul works his magic. And if there are no more questions from anybody, the final thing to say is thank you so much to all of you. The presentations were amazing. I've learned so much, so informative, and it's been a really great webinar. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.